My pleasure to introduce someone who needs no introduction. David Reuwer is going to talk about the Liberty Trail.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. September 5th, 1781, Nathaniel Greene writing to someone we know. Your exertions and success upon that occasion reflects the highest honor upon your command, and I beg leave to return to you my sincere thanks, and such of the troops under you as merit your approbation for their gallant behavior. Your success will be of a very great importance, and nothing could have happened more seasonably, as it will check the progress of the enemy and confirm your militia in their attachment. Who's he writing to? Loud.
Francis Marion.
And what's he writing about? What event? What battle? September 5th. Mom, we need to be doing this. What battle before Utah Springs? Anyone? Parker's Ferry. Parker's Ferry. So a lot of praise there coming from Nathaniel Greene to Francis Marion. Well, why do I start with that? Well, in front of you is the Liberty Trail. The South Carolina Battleground Preservation Trust, which I'm the vice president, has partnered with the American Battlefield Trust and many other organizations, especially at the state and local levels, to put the Liberty Trail together that you see. I thought it was more effective than the slide itself. But I want to convey a couple things right off the bat about the Liberty Trail. Last night, George and Carol honored Charles and I as ambassadors, but we're all ambassadors. That's why I'm wearing the Liberty hat, right? And then, of course, those of you who have asked about the map on my tie, it's Yorktown, because we don't have a South Carolina map battlefield at Parker's Ferry or Utah Springs. And then, of course, I wish the Liberty, is Sherry back there, Beth? So I'm wearing my George Washington socks. Well, because I don't have Francis Marion socks yet, Carol, and that's what we're going to do on the Liberty Trail and the 250th. We're going to show South Carolinians the story of our state as well as the nation. Now, the other thing that becomes important is how do we determine battlefields? And we go way back. It's the 3 A's. Archival research, primary sources, then secondary, primary, archival, anecdotal, that would include genealogy, stories that are in it that pass along. They have truth in them as well. You just got to do more research and homework, like Thickety Fort that you were mentioning yesterday. And then you have archival, anecdotal, and then of course archaeological. And that's been the mind-blowing event that South Carolina, on all of its 300 plus battlefields, there is still literally archaeology to be found. Not always in the ground. When I started this, we started it 17 years ago, there was stuff on the ground from the American Revolution. So place yourself as an ambassador regarding the Liberty Trail. Before you are 72 sites. But I want to convey the philosophy. There's neither an in nor an out, and on the trail and off the trail. The trail will be physical, it'll be real, it'll have interpretation on the battlefields. As Charles said yesterday, something to see. But it's also going to be digital, it's going to be audio, it's going to be on whatever the next tweet thing that'll be created we haven't even thought of yet. So you'll get the whole story, like the speakers that are going to follow me in a minute. You can get it on your phone when you're out there on the battlefield. We are already working in the Liberty Trail on a thing called augmented reality. I've only seen a little sliver of it, but you literally hold up your phone And not only can you see your child 3,000 miles away, but you'll be looking at the battlefield without one of those I'm not even saying it right, those symbols. You'll look at the battlefield, you'll plug in the app, and you'll see the troops moving on the actual field in the back. Remember, we used to see that with those viewfinders and everything back when we were children, but that'll all be in hand. So we're going to talk for the next few minutes, but I thought let's start with something, it's not my favorite, it is video.
And devoted hearts who fought for this field, for this road, for this swamp, who snuck like foxes from tree to tree, striking out at the British and then slipping through their grasp. A will for liberty took root here and sprouted into a revolution, our independence secured in the low and up country, across these swamps and pastures, forests and hills. The shot heard round the world rang out in the North as a rallying cry for American independence. In the southern colonies, however, it served only to amplify the growing discord between American patriots and British loyalists. Pledge allegiance to a king sitting far across the Atlantic, taxing fruits born from Carolinian soil, or stand up to the crown with an inferior army? As stalemate gripped the war in the North, the High Command began to eye the southern colonies, which were thought to harbor sympathy for the crown, that the British believed could be leveraged into a loyalist army. Twice the British tried to capture the port of Charlestown, the gateway to the south. Finally, they were successful in May of 1780. With the southern branch of the Continental Army in retreat, the British now had the foothold in the south to tip the balance of the war in their favor, and in time, snuff out the colonial uprising. But they underestimated the tenacity of Carolinians. Partisan militias had sprung up throughout the state. Inexperienced as they were, these men believed this land to be their own and were unshakable in their pursuit for liberty. Americans saw desperate and gruesome fighting. They were nearly destroyed at Waxhaws and Camden. But into this Carolina soil, they dug their heels, rising time and again to harass the British, and finally prevailing over loyalist and provincial forces at Musgrove's Mill and Kings Mountain. Word began to spread. A small band of patriots was defying the Crown's efforts to seize the southern colonies. Soon the Continental Army, along with the militia, achieved a cunning victory at Cowpens, setting into motion a string of events that saw the British split in two. One element surrendered at Yorktown, and the other eventually retreated to Charlestown, where they remained till war's end, bottled up by the very patriots they hoped to suppress. With over 200 battles and skirmishes fought within the state's borders, South Carolinians felt the full force of civil and global war. From 1780 to 1782 alone, more than 1,000 South Carolinians laid down their lives on America's road to liberty. But what remains of those intrepid days? Victory lies dormant, buried, and the hallowed grounds where the blood of those brave Carolinians was shed sits neglected and overgrown. The American Battlefield Trust has partnered with the South Carolina Battleground Trust to preserve these battlefields and unify them with the creation of the Liberty Trail. Sweeping across the state, the Liberty Trail is an innovative driving tour that will fully convey South Carolina's Revolutionary War story, bring tourism and economic development to local communities, and invite a larger audience to appreciate the state's contribution to American independence. The trail will feature brand new battlefield parks at Utah Springs, Camden, Waxhaws, Hanging significant additions and improvements to existing parks. Each stop along the driving tour will feature unique on-site interpretations that will connect visitors to the extraordinary events that came to pass nearly 250 years ago. The Liberty Trail will honor the patriots that decided the Revolution's outcome in the swamps, fields, woods, and mountains of South Carolina. Those Carolinians blazed the trail to liberty. And all we've got to do is cut back the brush, clear off the path, and bring to light South Carolina's pivotal story in the American Revolution. Will you stand by as these battlefields slip further into obscurity? Or will you help us preserve these hallowed grounds and blaze the Liberty Trail?
All of this is work that we are doing, and that you're encouraged to continue with. But let me make some thoughts and work you through in the next few minutes, and then I'm going to ask my colleague and I to come up and answer any questions. But the first is a big piece of news. After years of working, we have signed contracts for saving a significant part of the battlefield of Port Royal, also known as Gray's Hill. You've all been down it when you're on Route 21 headed to Hilton Head, to the Paris Island, and to Beaufort. You go right through the battlefield. So we have saved a significant portion of the battlefield and purchased it, and then we'll do some interpretation on the field related to it. The other interesting news, and why I started with our Parker's Ferry quote, is I'm here to announce, for those who haven't heard, we have bought 32 acres of the battlefield of Parker's Ferry, which sits in a wonderful cluster of historic Revolutionary War sites in Jacksonboro, South Carolina. So, but I want to give you the real live examples, okay? Because it doesn't just happen by magic. So that 32 acres costs $3,535 an acre, which comes to $113,000. $113,000. We add a little more on and for surveying and testing that has to be done, and appraisals that are required for some of the grants that we raise, and it comes to $124,000. The South Carolina Battleground Trust has raised $99,000. So we haven't closed yet, for those of you who we've all bought houses, right? So we haven't closed. We're short of about $25,000, and I'll come back to that. If you look at your map, the first parts of the trail we're attacking, not because we're waiting on the others. For example, Durant might be doing something on one of the backcountry Durant, not upstate. We'll change the tourism back there. But we're focused on the 200 miles from Monk's Corner to Waxhaws. And the 5 big battlefields through that would be Fairlawn, which is an extant redoubt, British redoubt. People go to Yorktown to see what they think is the Revolution, and they're seeing the Civil War. And we have it right there in Monk's Corner for people to come. And then it'll be Camden, also Fort Watson, which is on the way to Camden. Then Hanging Rock, the wonderful Battle of Hanging Rock, has actually been, probably a third of it has been purchased by us. And then we own now 56 acres at the battlefield of Waxhaws. And we're working on the east side of Waxhaws on another 50 to 60 acres. So these are magnificent battlefields that are now saved. Huzzah! Huzzah! So the beauty of the Liberty Trail is you can engage at any level. For example, I'm going to call Durant a lot more, I'm picking on him, but he's going to clear brush anywhere we want it to be cleared, and you heard it in the video and you heard it in this. because that's a step. If you don't know it's there, then you can't find it either. But think further and think bigger, and I guess one of the key words or elements, as we lawyers call them, is this whole thing is evolutionary. It's not all going to be done yet today. It's not going to be done tomorrow or by the time our lives are finished. It's like our liberty, evolutionary. But I want to convey another thought as we develop these, and that is we live in a digital world even before COVID, right? And some of our partners say that, and for us in here, we're the choir, we like to visit the sites. It's not the same thing on a photo, it's not the same thing on TV, it certainly is not the same thing, the actual site, on a computer. So the importance of the Liberty Trail is the realness of it. Every one of those battlefields, or Mark's historic site over there in Illinois, is an actual site you want people to come to. You want them to learn digitally or augmented reality-wise, but you want them to come to the field. And that can't be underestimated, especially even before COVID, you know, that these real sites are under attack. The Harper's Ferry I grew up with when I was a kid is not the Harper's Ferry you go to today, and that's a shame. Probably the most important one is the plane at the Battle of Fredericksburg. I know it's the other war, but when I was a kid, it was 150 yards long, wide on the stone wall, and now it's 15 yards wide. The rest is a housing development, which they've hidden behind houses. Now, we're going to have those same issues here, because it's a balancing test. But we want to get out ahead of the curve. That's what the Liberty Trail is doing. And then I want to give you another conveyance about the Liberty Trail. It's not just history. In fact, more people will visit these battlefields as parks than will ever visit them for history. And I welcome that. Charles gave us the 250th command yesterday. Get ready, they're coming. I want people running on the dirt paths. I want people walking their dogs and exercising. Far more recreational people will visit our sites than will ever be history. And there's nothing wrong with that, because the history and our liberty will wear off on that. Now let me tell you a tool you can use with your local politicians or local planning departments. The best kept economic development secret in South Carolina, especially for the poor half of the 46 counties that are going backwards, is the Liberty Trail and the Revolutionary War battlefields. Am I right? More people will see, again, it's Charles's words, if they go to Utah Springs, when they begin to see the interpretation spread out over a mile instead of the 5-acre little park, which is only a little piece of the battlefield, and they stop and buy gas and they eat at that restaurant or they buy crackers, it will change the economic economy of Utah Springs and Santee. Remember, 2/3 of the country travels 13 miles from Utah Springs. It doesn't know that battlefield's there. And in case you still don't get it, the entire city street system of downtown Baltimore City, where I was born and grew up, is named after, every one of the streets is named after one of the patriots or their middle names. For all of Baltimore is named after Utah Springs. And hardly anybody in Maryland gets that. That's what we're going to change. And I want to go further in terms of this Liberty Trail. Don't think that it'll be here. Don't think that it'll be safe. Go up to the far back country, which they call the upstate, and you'll see how much development has occurred when it's one big city up there now. And we're for that, as long as you use Revolutionary War history as part of the economic development and infrastructure of a particular county or place. Remember that the soldiers who fought here, they're real. Their sufferings were real, their commitments were real, their blood was real on both sides. And part of our commission is to tell all sides of the story. Remember, Parker's Ferry, almost one half of the troops on the British side were German. Powerful story to be told there. Now, just to make sure you're still awake here and as we wrap things up, Parker's Ferry has this great historic site and sites, and it has the battlefield now that we own, though we still need and will be welcome to receive any checks for the $25,000. It has a church, which is called Pon Pon. Can anybody, besides the Reverend, name what the real name of that church is? It's a ruins now, of course. Yes, sir?
St. Bartholomew's.
Oh, excellent. So, and by the way, who is St. Bartholomew? And you know what name I'm looking for.
I'll let someone else get it.
Okay. I'm getting caught up. I'm going to give you this. This is our ambassador sweatshirt, t-shirt, Paddle the Battle. Paddle the Battle. And it is George and Carol Francis Marion on top of the kayak. Because in the low country, those battles, sir, come on up. You get this. Paddle the Battle, Francis Marion. Now, by the way, in case you think your check wasted the money for the t-shirt, congratulations, sir. It did not. It did not. Because somebody in the low country beyond, help me out, Stone Oak Ferry battlefield, which we own, is stabling some horses in a stable that's already on the battlefield, and in exchange, they're giving us some free t-shirts, for example, in addition to rent. See how we have cross constituencies on our battlefields for Liberty Trail? So that's what we got to think of. Recreational, economic development, and historic heritage and tourism. Now, another commission that was given to us by the 250 chairman was think of people that are significant. So I just want to give you an example of people with Marion. Peter Ory would later become the Register of Deeds after the war for the town for the city of Charleston. Andrew Pickens, who's one of the big triumvirate with Francis Marion Sumter, he will actually be the lead commissioner who settles the northwestern boundary of the state of South Carolina with the state of Georgia. Although Holland Williams will become, after the war, the Port Authority, literally the Port Authority of the city of Baltimore. Thomas Taylor, who works with Sumter and also works with Marion, he will actually, of course, win the debate a couple years later in Columbia as a state senator, and the capital of Columbia is his plantation versus Statesburg, which was Thomas Sumter's. So see the connectivity of it. You know, if you're into politics, now we can wheel you into the American Revolution. So the question becomes, as we look at these battlefields, or one you think that needs to be, I guess I need to say this too with the Liberty Trail. There are lots of parts that are right associated with it. So you don't think that all the ones that are within a close drive, meaning 3 or 4 counties, it's going to say, view the murals at the Swamp Fox murals, view the murals that go directly to you. That kind of connectivity is all going to be there. So you don't have to worry about being off because you're already on it, George and Carol. And that's what we want, even if you've just got a little museum. Do you know that there's Thomas Sumter and Francis Marion furniture in the Sumter County Museum? A couple pieces that have provenance from their families handed down. Well, nobody would know that going to one of our battlefields, but we want Sumter knots or Marion knots to be able to go there and see it. So the question remains between digital or conferences and the real world. And we continue to challenge you. You yourselves get out to these other sites, but more importantly, take your family, take your spouse, for God's sake, take your grandchild to one of these fields. And if you don't get it, look it up, read it, fall in love with some part of it. What a wonderful presentation Mark did yesterday with other people. Now, here's the big problem we face, whether it's raising money, interpretation, or not, and it is this. We live in a world, not the one I was born into, that asks what our country gives me. I'll say it again because it's real. But no matter, and this is beyond politics, but when I was a kid, and way beyond that, when you were born, George, it was about what can I do for my country? Okay. That's the difference, but it goes way beforehand. And we've lost that. And the question isn't, well, what do I get to see? Although we're going to change that with the Liberty Trail, but it's then going to be when you see it and visit it, what are you going to do? And remember, this is another important part of why we fought a several-month battle with the Yankees on the Liberty Trail because they wanted to call it the Freedom Trail or the Southern Freedom Trail. And we said, no, you all don't understand. We're not interested in freedom as much as we're interested in liberty. Liberty is freedom coupled with responsibility. Liberty is freedom coupled with responsibility. Thank you. Sir. Oh, wait a minute. Did you hear that? Yeah. What are they saying? The soldiers? What is Francis Marion saying? Marion. Well, he's saying something else. Listen. They who shed their blood for our liberty, men and women, are asking us not to be so ordinary. They are asking us, calling out to us, asking and claiming us to become revolutionary. Huzzah! Huzzah! Charles, if you come up, we'd like to answer any questions and thoughts you may have about the Liberty Trail. Don't be shy, please.
David agreed to share his time a little bit this morning because I want you to know that our 250th Commission has fully endorsed the Liberty Trail. And it's so easy, I think, to say, oh my gosh, we have experts from out of town who are going to come fix this for us and we don't have to do anything. Oh yeah, David did a little bit of a stewardship call. But this is the truth of the deal. There is no experts from out of town. The American Battleground Trust could not find in a South Carolina battlefield with a Sherpa guide. We, the people of South Carolina, who have studied this and know this, have to put them in our car and take them there and explain it to them. They don't get it. The South Carolina Battleground Trust is an old organization, but it does not have huge resources. It does not have a huge endowment. It's got people who support it with huge hearts. But if we don't have folks like us who care enough to take a Friday and Saturday off to learn a little bit more about Francis Marion, supporting it and loving it, we have no chance. This is not a big government project where there's $1 million of overrun money. The Liberty Trail, the first part of the Liberty Trail, is about an $11 million fundraise lift. And that's just phase one. So every one of these places have got to have us to fix it up because companies are coming. The advertising campaign that will swirl around the 250th will be international. And people have heard of South Carolina, they've heard of the Swamp Fox thanks to Walt Disney. But if we don't have our act together and we send people to battlefields, I see them, but I'm not going to be out there standing on 70 battlefields to explain who was where and what happened there, what difference it made. We've got to acquire these sites, we've got to do the research, we've got to interpret these sites. There is no them, it is us. Now, it's not a crisis, but the big cause today is to raise the money to buy the Parker's Ferry battlefield. And Parker's Ferry is a beautiful Francis Marion site. It's pretty, and David talks about it like it's in downtown Highway 17. No, it's pretty remote. And hopefully we'll get the county and the state to work on the road to get there a little bit so you can't just go there if it hadn't rained in a while. But everybody says, oh, Francis Marion was the master of the ambush. Well, Francis Marion truthfully didn't use ambushes very much, but this is the Francis Marion ambush site in which we whipped the devil out of the South Carolina Royalists. So it's a South Carolina on South Carolina fight, a clear Marion victory, and a clear use of the classic Marion ambush strategy. We need to tell that story. It's a sacred site. The first battlefield I worked on was the Battle of Candor, where we got dusted badly, and people would come up to me and say, why would you want to save a battlefield where we lost? And I said, well, should we, not have the national park at Pearl Harbor? We didn't do too good there. But a lot of Americans died there, and a lot of Americans were there because they were asked by their country to be there, and they became the tripwire that energized America to win World War II. So yes, you have to celebrate your wins and your losses. So, Parker's Ferry is a great win for the Americans. It put, Marion's reputation was already made. But it showed that Marion was thinking big picture. He was down in the low country, not in his normal area of operations around here. So if you can, I would ask you to do what I'm doing, and that is send a check to the Battleground Trust. Just put on there Parker's Ferry, and let's help get that money together to close that deal so that the piece of Parker's Ferry, where archaeology has proved the battlefield to be, will be in permanent protection, and we can start the interpretation there, because there is zero interpretation there, zero. So David, thank you for sharing a little bit of your time. I absolutely support the Battleground Trust, and it is not them, them is us. Thank you.
Does anybody have questions for either of us? Go ahead, Doug.
So, of these 72 sites, is there going to be historic markers and storyboards?
Durant, I am so glad you asked that. Yet, them ain't gonna do it. We have to do it. They don't even know where the sites are.
So what is the process for us to set up historic markers and storyboards at these 72 sites?
There are two angles. One, of course, is the historic markers work for the American Revolution. And raise your hand, Bill. Where's Bill's?
Where's Bill?
Bill Seeger. Raise your hand. Stand up. Bill is leading the 250th marker. We're thinking those historic iron markers. So you would contact him.
We need to talk.
But as to interpretive markers, the other kind that are down, you would contact us or me and the Battleground Trust or Charles.
So is there a process and a procedure in
Well,
place?
he will teach you the process related to the interpretive state, no, Bill, we're all right, just hold on a second. State markers, and then if you would contact the Battleground Trust about your particular field of interest place.
And is there a cost involved?
Of course, because...
How much?
No. You're not... We got to see what you're going to write, how much you're going to write, and what you want to do. All of that is...
Yeah, just generally, a lot of sites in South Carolina are small skirmishes, and probably one sign would be sufficient. But if you're talking about Utah Springs that covers many square miles and has many phases and operations, then you may be talking about as many as 24. So it's hard to say how much. And since this is a local grassroots effort, I don't think that there's any one magic formula of how to mark a battlefield. Now, there will be electronic cues built into the electronic system that is available, where your cell phone knows where it is geospatially, and so if you're standing on where something happened, it's going to tell you that. But not just everybody likes to get data that way, and not just everywhere data is available that way. And so the old-fashioned signage is something that must be done